Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Mr. Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. We are doing a position group analysis for the entire roster, stretching all of the summer until training camp, looking at all the position groups, figuring out where our strengths and weaknesses are, how maybe the coaching staffs will use those individual resources, and should be a fun conversation. Today we are doing tight ends as well as fullbacks. I think we kind of decided to lump those in together, just because the fullbacks have a lot of tight end experience, and they're going to be used together in conjunction with how Clint Kubiak kind of wants to run his scheme, as opposed to the fullbacks with the running backs. So welcome in. How you doing, Keith?
I'm doing good. Interesting discussion today. We've got, I'm sure, a debate coming up about how long a certain player lasts on the roster. So I'm looking forward to that.
Among others. Yeah. So, I guess before we start talking about players, it would be helpful to kind of set the table as far as what the scheme is going to ask of this position group, as well as the fullbacks, just to kind of provide the basis for how we talk about these individual players. Seattle last year ranked third in the league in 11 personnel usage, which is 3 receivers, 1 running back, 1 tight end. Mm-hmm. That to me is going to kind of be reversed this year. For example, I think Seattle is going to be ranked third in the NFL in 12 and 13 personnel, for example. 2 tight end sets, 3 tight end sets, 2 running back sets, 1 would be a fullback. Those sorts of personnel groupings are going to occupy probably 70% of the offense in total, as opposed to running out 3 wide receivers, which now I think is going to be like 30%, maybe 35%. I'm really curious as to, and that's based on what Clint Kubiak did in Minnesota in 2021, what he did in New Orleans in 2024, and what the 49ers did in 2023 when he was the quarterbacks coach. And so based on that history, that's kind of what we can expect Clint Kubiak to run here. And it will vary a little bit just because we have different personnel. So he's going to kind of marry up his scheme to what we have and kind of accentuate what we are trying to do with that. But I'm curious as to how you feel about that transformation. Like, there is not going to be a lot in this offense other than some players that look anything like what we had going on last year.
Well, that's a good thing, because last year's offense was schematically awful. And so anything that's different is probably going to be better. But as far as the personnel groupings and that kind of stuff, I think it's, I don't love it when coaches get set on, this is what we do. We run 2 tight ends, or we run whatever. It's like, what do you have for roster on the talent? Talent on the roster. But because if you're taking a really good player off the field to bring on a mediocre tight end because you think having 2 tight ends is better, you're not doing yourself any favors. Now, I don't think that's a problem that Seattle has. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this idea that you have to have certain personnel groupings as a coach, I don't know. It's not my favorite thing for coaches to say and talk about and do. I figure out what your talent is. Get your talent on the field. Use your talent to the best of their abilities. That's what a good coordinator does. And we'll see. Now, Seattle's got some good tight ends. They just drafted a really crazy athletic tight end. And yeah, get the people on the field. They also receiver isn't necessarily a strength anymore. So, um,
Well, that was the
there's
nice thing about what they did in the offseason, like, and having the coaching staff in place prior to free agency, prior to the draft, is they were able to kind of enhance those positions that they knew. And we didn't even have a fullback on the roster prior to February. They were able to enhance that prior to, so they could run their personnel groupings of choice. I thought that was pretty smart.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that this is what happens when a coaching staff and a front office are working together. Is they made those adjustments, because there are certain things that you need out of your wide receivers, but the idea that you had to keep your receivers on the field because they were simply just your better players. Um, I mean, that's what you want, but at the same time, like, if you want to run a certain running scheme that requires a second tight end, like, well, maybe you need more tight end talent, so that way you are okay with pulling one of those wide receivers. And so they did that. They went and they didn't dump Noah Fant in his contract, and they went and got Elijah Arroyo. So they've now got 3 quality tight ends on the roster.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, here's what Clint Kubiak said about the tight end position. I think it's such a critical position in our scheme for sure, because you're involved in the run and the pass game and protection, Kubiak said. I think obviously you're going to be looking for, number one, a guy that can contribute to blocking in the running game. And then a guy that can stretch the field. You're looking, especially nowadays, for a guy that can rip the seam, and guys that can make explosive plays between the hashes for you. And then a guy that can go block at 265 defensive end. So that's not an easy guy to find. And then he went on to say, if you're going to be that guy, you've got to be able to block. And at the time, I think he was referring to Noah Fant when he made that comment, because that was in February. And what is interesting for me with Kubiak, that marries up so well with what Mike McDonald has come out and said, we want to be physical, we want to run the ball effectively, et cetera, is he's so into that everything that he talks about is stemmed off a conversation that starts with running the ball. It's like, yeah, our scheme, or this, that, the other, and when we block, and when we do this, and when we try to run the ball, and these guys need to block, and we need to draft wide receivers that can also block. All of it is trying to enhance what they really want to be good at. In fact, Abe Lucas kind of came out just this week, a couple days ago, in practice, and he says, I'll put it like this. We're trying to be elite at a very few things, but those few things are what the offense is going to be based around, and that's the run game. He went on and commented, but I love this focus. It's so focused. It's completely not like what we had before. And maybe you can even go back to beyond Shane Waldron, where the offense now has a purpose and an identity. And we talked about that so much last year, Keith, like in almost every show, almost after every game, it was like, we lack an identity on offense. Nothing. There's no identity. It's so hodgepodgey, which Abe Lucas kind of referred to. And I love this kind of focus, and really leads to kind of this tight end conversation first. And we'll talk about the fullbacks, but at tight end, there's specific roles now that these guys have. Obviously, we have Noah Fant existing on the roster. We drafted Elijah Arroyo in the second round, didn't move up to get him, but drafted him in a good value spot. And then we have AJ Barner. I think those 3 are like really a good tight end room, but I wish Noah Fant was kind of predictable. I just don't know about his predictability in this scheme. And we're going to find out. Like, I think he starts as the tight end number 1, but I think Arroyo kind of really pushes him all year, which I think is a great thing, because I think he needs to be pushed. Like, he's been assigned that number 1 spot, but he hasn't really earned it. So I want to talk to you about the tight end group. Like, how do you feel that they're going to be used? Each tight end on the roster kind of has a different skill set. Maybe Arroyo and Fant are similar, although I would argue Arroyo is a more accomplished blocker even right now coming into the league. How is Clint Kubiak going to focus this group to do what he needs to do to be successful?
Well, I mean, what he's got, you just mentioned like the Arroyo, who's the rookie, and AJ Barner, who's just finished his rookie year. A couple of young players who can block and are athletic and do a lot of things really well. Barner is the best blocker of the three by a significant margin, but he's no slouch as a guy who can get out into space and move some chains with some receptions and that kind of stuff. And so he kind of, to me, is the Clint Kubiak, like what Kubiak wants, right? He's the guy that's going to be an accomplished blocker, but isn't, he's not a right tackle. You know what I mean? He's not a right tackle with the wrong number on his back. He's a guy that can move and do those things, but he can straight up block, like the best of them. Arroyo is kind of at this point in his career, kind of that midpoint between the two of the other guys. He's much more athletic, can stretch the field, can do a lot of really good things there, and is a willing blocker, but needs some significant technique adjustments before anyone would confuse him with AJ Barner. And then you've got Fant, who is an accomplished receiver of the football, and doesn't block well. And I would agree with you that what Kubiak was talking about in February was a challenge. It was hey, like, if you want to play, if you want to get on the field, you better be willing to block.
Not only willing, I think that's step number one, but with Noah Fant, you've got to be able to sustain like a block for a minute to allow your running back or whatever, or Jalen Milroe to get outside of you, and then you can, whatever. But I would like to see that. I would like to see a little bit more effort. But again, some guys are built like that mentally. And age, no offense, not a huge guy, but he's 245, 250. You should be able to at least, at a minimum, you mentioned being willing, and the next thing would be to at least chip, like as a receiving tight end, quote unquote. You should at least be able to chip somebody and delay them by a half a second or whatever the criteria is. And I think he can do that. I just don't know. I mean, he was graded out as 67th out of 74 tight ends in Pro Football Focus blocking, and 69th run blocking, and 69th overall in pass blocking. So something's got to change there. Now, the good news is he, along with all the offensive linemen, have a great run game coordinator, great line blocking guy in Benton. Those guys are also going to be working with those coaches to enhance their own blocking technique and so forth. So maybe he can pick some things up.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly athletic and big enough to do it. Why hasn't he? Because he's never been asked to. I mean, not really. He's never been required to. He's always been such a good asset as a receiver, and just kind of a matchup problem for opposing teams. That was what he was asked to do, is just to go be that, and we'll have someone else, chip those defensive ends on their way out and that kind of thing. So whatever. But I agree with you.
So what do you expect from Noah Fant then this year?
I think Noah Fant's going to have a harder time because of the blocking and stuff. And because you've got Elijah Arroyo there, like right behind him. He's going to have a harder time justifying his spot on the field for every down. And so I think you're going to he'll end up with similar stats to what he's had the last 3 years. But I think it will be same stats on fewer snaps. So more efficient, more productive that way. But
so if you combine the snaps and the production from Noah Fant and Elijah Arroyo, that's, that I think is going to be the key to that particular tight end spot. Like Noah Fant and Elijah Arroyo, while they can block and whatever, I don't think that Clint Kubiak's going to make them block all the time. It's not like they're going to become inline tight ends. They're still going to be used. It'd be a waste of, resources and talent to have them block all the time. I mean, you mentioned the idea of Noah Fant having the similar stats, and the tight end usage overall as a group is going to go way up. I would say an increase of like 25% on the field taking snaps overall as a group. How are those are divided? We'll see. And I agree with you. I think Noah Fant ends up with the same stats, like 45 receptions on 60 targets, let's say. But Elijah Arroyo is also going to have like 35 receptions and 50 targets. Like those targets didn't exist last year, and now they're
actually what you described was the combination of Fant and Barner's stats last year.
But I think Barner still stays effective as well. I mean, that's what I mean. I like those three are going to have an increase overall in production of like 25-30% on this scheme.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I just I would like to see those numbers up overall. So yeah, I mean, Fant had 64 targets last year and ended up with 48 receptions for 500 yards. So those are not great. I would love to see his receptions up, even if it's a small increment, get him up to 55, but on roughly the same number of targets. Because I think that when you look at Barner, if Barner's going to Barner only had 38 targets last year, but he had 30 receptions, 245 yards in
different ways.
Great.
I mean, you mentioned Kubiak like ripping the seams, challenging defenses vertically and stuff. I mean, to expect Noah Fant to increase his productivity on opportunities, you would then ask him to play closer to the line of scrimmage, and I'm not sure that's going to happen.
I don't know. I think it would. It's an efficiency thing. I'd like to see. I mean, everything should be more efficient than it was last year, because last year it was.
I agree with that.
Offensive efficiency was terrible. You'd hope that, given how poor the offense was schemed last year, that if Fant's ripping the seams and doing those things, and he'll get the ball thrown at him when he's open, when he has an opportunity to do something with it, and not just because, we haven't done this in a while, so we should probably throw there, which is what it felt like at times last year. And so a lot of throwing in a double coverage and that kind of stuff when the ball did get go his way.
It's a huge opportunity this year, because there's going to be a lot of underneath stuff, a lot of screens to the running backs, all that kind of stuff, to set up these opportunities. And the real opportunity, I think, is Noah Fant and Arroyo in this scheme, because they are never going to be double teamed. And they are always going to be on a linebacker or safety. So that's where I think Arroyo and Fant could really break out in this thing. If the opportunities are there, I think they'll be there. Question is, can Sam Darnold have enough time in the pocket to make these completions? But those guys are going to have a fair share of opportunities to do that for sure.
I'm really looking forward to this more, not in 2025, but in 2026, when it's Arroyo on one side of the line and AJ Barner on the other in those two tight end sets, because you could run in either direction either one of them could be um, the backside that takes off and runs down the seam. Like there's a lot to like about that because both of them can block and all those things. Now, neither of them have the ability to just get separation the way Fant does, but I don't know. I guess for me, that's less of a thing for a tight end. I want guys that can be physical, block, do that part of the job, and then offer enough athleticism that they can, go catch a pass and do something with it without having to. Because a lot of tight end receptions tend to be schemed, right? They're not. I just got separation because I just beat the guy trying to cover me. There's no one really trying to cover him. It's about finding the right soft spot in the zone and or running a route so that way you can get the ball between, when the linebacker releases you before the safety can move over and take you. That's when the ball arrives. And it's a lot of zone coverage beater type stuff. And that's what those guys will do well. What Fant does well is those things, but also he can beat man coverage in a way that most tight ends can't. But I don't know that. Are you wanting your tight end to line up in the slot? Because that's the kind of thing that you're looking for. If you do that, the Seahawks have plenty of slot receivers. So, right, that's where Cooper Kupp's going to be, is the big slot. So let him go do that and leave your tight ends on the line. So I don't know. That's long-winded.
I think there'll be some interchanging.
I just like the usage.
So. Yeah, no, I think there'll be plenty of opportunities to interchange those guys. Cooper Kupp is used to playing some inline looks anyway. Like if you go watch him in the Rams, he's lined up, right off the outside shoulder of the tackle sometimes, and it's kind of a weird thing. But they move him around from there. He has also a great blocker. Like he's almost like having a third tight end on the field when he's on there, and you've got two tight end sets. So I do think they run those guys from the slot. They've already talked about that. Clint Kubiak, how he utilizes his tight ends in receiving, and some of it's from the slot, some of it's from the outside. We talked about Arroyo being a guy that you could essentially swap out for an outside X wide receiver occasionally. We're not talking like 25% of the snaps, but 10% of the snaps. Maybe they move those guys around, disguise coverages, all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting. Let's talk about Elijah Arroyo for a minute. So, and then we'll move on to AJ Barner. Arroyo in college, he only caught 46 passes total. Like we drafted this dude in the second round on 46 pass catches in production, and 35 of them came last year. So really only 1 year of production, 16.9 yards per reception, the most yards per reception out of this draft class. Mm-hmm. So he does have that ability that Clint Kubiak wants on the offense to stretch the field, especially in the seams, down the center of the field, against favorable coverage. He's got a huge opportunity here to really be a solid piece in this offense, especially as the year progresses. I think Noah Fant gets those early snaps. And if something doesn't quite jive with what Clint Kubiak's looking for, he probably won't have any problem putting the rookie in there and giving him a shot. In fact, we could see it as early as preseason games. So. Yeah.
I mean, that's what preseason's for. So when the guys that are going to make the roster are out there, get them out there, get them experience, have them do stuff that you, want to see, and or they need to learn how to do. Like that's what preseason's for these guys that we know are going to make the team. So as for Arroyo and his 40 some receptions in his entire collegiate career, that was why people were split on, is because some people look at his 2024 season and it was good and his tape is good. And some people looked at his overall stats and you're like, yikes, this guy did nothing. Um, Part of that's usage and how he was being used and the talent that was on his teams that he was playing for. Um, and part of it was that he didn't really develop as a player. He was a late bloomer.
And he was injured for 2 years.
Yeah, but that's part of what, but he also was kind of a late bloomer when it comes to football. And so his tape from last year I thought was great. And then you combine that with him just coming out and dominating at the Senior Bowl practices every day, against some of the top linebackers and safeties in college football, and more so than any other tight end that was there. Like, he was clearly the best tight end at the Senior Bowl. And you look at that and you're like, okay, maybe those production numbers don't matter as much. And so that's what the Seahawks thought. They think they're getting a guy that is going to be a unique, just really good player. A little concerned about the injury history, right? Because you got to stay healthy to get on the field in the NFL. But at the same time, I think he's worth the risk because of just how athletic he is for that position and for that size.
So let's now talk about what Clint Kubiak really wants to focus on out of this group is blocking, and how they run that scheme, how they disguise it, all those kind of things. It starts with AJ Barner. I mean, he's now easily tight end number 2, probably tight end number 1 by the time the season ends. He's just a great mix, kind of a hybrid guy that can do it all. He's a do-it-all tight end, which is perfect for this scheme. Barner is going to play a very important role, I think, overall on this, for this offense. Talk to me about that, how you see him used in this offense.
Oh, I mean, he's one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. We saw that last year. Like, this guy is got good technique, good size, good power. He does all the things that you'd expect a blocking tight end to do. So he can really just get after, defensive ends and linebackers and do the job. He's a more athletic version of Will Disley, who the team had for a few years before him. That's who he was drafted to replace, was Disley, who was a phenomenal blocker at the tight end spot. And I mean, how do you define tight end 1 versus 2 versus 3 in this scheme? I don't know, because I think they all have different strengths, and you bring in guys to. It's not just like, oh, well, Fant's the number 1, so he's going to be out there 100% of the time. It's like, why? Why would you do that? Fant doesn't block well, and if you're running a play that needs a guy that can block well, why wouldn't you have AJ Barner in there? So if you're counting snaps, I would agree. I think Barner is going to have, because of the way they want to run the ball and because of the way they want their tight ends to block, Barner should probably be getting the most snaps because he's the best blocker of the group. He may not get the most receptions or the opportunities for receptions, because that's what the other 2 guys are for. But you want a lead blocker in a zone stretch scheme. Barner's your guy. Like, he's the guy on the outside pushing the entire the entire defensive formation wide.
He's the point of the spear, really.
Yeah, so that someone else can make the seal block and give the running back a hole to cut through. But he's got to be the guy out in front that gets either the defensive end or the outside linebacker and just keeps them going wider and wider and wider, so that way they don't get upfield, and they never have an opportunity to impact the play. And when you
go ahead.
And when you do that, you're going to keep either a safety or a corner wide, because they're going to be trying to stay outside of you and outside of the guy that you're pushing in order to set an edge, right? And so it ends up being, it's an important job in this particular running scheme, to have that person out pushing a guy wide and just washing him out of the play all the way to the sideline if you have to.
In addition to that, they will run, traps and counters and reverses off of that, especially with Jalen Milroe in the game. It's like you can imagine the offense going one way, AJ Barner peeling back around and lead blocking out to the opposite side in front of Milroe, because you want a super athletic guy that can get across the field in time to do that on that timing play, and be able to block in space, and he'd be perfect for that. Now, Abe Lucas, I'm sure he could probably do that, and even our guard, whoever that ends up being, Haynes, but AJ Barner would be a guy that you could really kind of peel out and lead the opposite direction, I think.
I'm honestly I'm looking forward to seeing Arroyo in that spot because he's got the speed to get out there and make a block before Milroe turns the corner. Milroe's got so much speed that he may outrun his blocking in those situations.
He does outrun his blocking if you go watch him on tape, but it doesn't even matter in college, at least in the SEC, which is, those are super athletic guys. But man, well, Milroe's, that's a completely different conversation. We had that conversation, but yeah, you're right. I think that the two athletic, I don't know that I would necessarily put Fan out there because I don't trust him to be able to block.
No, I would trust
Arroyo
him to miss the block and
right and screw up the play.
I mean, in that situation, what I think you'd ask Fant to do if he's the guy is to go make it look like he's going to block and then release behind the release behind the player and give Milroe an outlet to throw the ball.
Maybe,
but yeah. I mean, maybe Fant will finally, things will click for him as a blocker, and he'll do better this year now that he's finally being challenged to do so.
Yes,
but
maybe. Yeah, they're seemingly all bought in. That's the thing about this year compared to last year. I think I'm noticing that everyone is kind of towing the line, saying the same things. They're all on the same page. They all showed up to OTAs, which are, by the way, voluntary. And they're all, I think, willing to do whatever it takes to make this thing work. And he's one of them, and he's a good guy. He's a good presence. He tries hard. I'm not exactly sure why it hasn't worked out, why he hasn't lived up to that, first round stuff. He's fringy. You're never going to see him on a top 10 list though, and it's
you did before.
Maybe this year's the change. Yeah.
I mean, and he lived up to that first round, those first round numbers in Denver when he was getting 90 targets a year and put together some tremendous seasons where he had, 4 touchdowns and 673 yards. And I mean, that's great for a tight end. I mean, it's not like the Jimmy Graham type numbers, but Jimmy Graham was not a tight end. He was a receiver in a tight end number on his back because he blocked even far worse than Noah Fant ever
That's true.
Does. So
let's talk quickly about the back end of the room. We signed free agent Eric Saubert, formerly with the 49ers, inline guy, blocking tight end, not going to give you anything in the receiving game. Nick Callerup, Marshall Lang round out the room, undrafted guys brought onto the roster just to kind of compete, take a look at them. Mm-hmm. I guess number one, and then let's talk about the fullback room, because I was going to ask you, well, how many tight ends do you think we're going to keep? And I was going to get into that Noah Fant question that you brought up at the beginning of the conversation. Maybe we can round back up to that. So fullbacks, let's talk about fullbacks, Keith. Brady Russell's been on the roster for a few years, not even on the roster, mostly on the practice squad, brought up a couple different times, worked himself into a role where he was playing a lot of special teams, didn't really see the field as a tight end. I think he's got 1 or 2 receptions from that spot over the last couple of years. Drafted a guy in Robbie Oots earlier than everyone kind of thought. that he would go or even go undrafted. But they had a specific role that they have identified for him, and they drafted him specifically for that role. And he was the best player that they identified in the draft to do that. And so, therefore, I think that player at that spot is really intriguing for me this year. And just kind of fits the bill as far as what you want a physical fullback to look like in the NFL. And we'll see who wins that competition, but I have a feeling it's going to be Robbie Oots.
I would agree. I mean, he's a rookie. He's only 22. He's bigger by 24 pounds. I just think he's going to be the guy that's going to have that opportunity. Brady Russell's a good dude and he works hard, but he's been on and off the practice squad multiple times. He's in his 3 years in the league, and he's probably destined for the practice squad again this year.
I would agree with that.
And then we'll see if he can, work his way back onto the roster again. But the Seahawks want to have a football or a fullback, and they're one of like 2 teams in the NFL that will have a designated fullback on the roster. And okay, I like it. I like what it does for the running game, especially in a zone stretch scheme like Seattle's going to run, because it's not typical of a zone stretch scheme, and so it's a wrinkle that you go and you look at the film and you figure out how you want to defend it. It is a little different when there's a fullback in their lead blocking. And so, yeah, I mean, there's some things to like there, but do you, if you're, a coach, do you take Elijah Arroyo and his athleticism and ability off the field to bring on Robbie Oates? Like, I don't know how often that works in your favor. And so that's the reason why teams have gone away from having a fullback, is because they don't offer much. And if Brady Russell, who's been a tight end, can be a fullback, then why wouldn't you just put AJ Barner in there as your fullback? And let him do both tight end and fullback stuff. And that's what most teams have done. But okay, Seattle wants to be different, and I'm okay with them being different. Let's see how it works. But I would give the nod to Robbie Oots over Brady Russell all day, every day, simply because of age and contract, and yeah.
Yeah, and if you go watch some tape of Robbie Oots, and there's not a lot, but if you do, and Jalen Milroe was his quarterback, they do connect on some plays, so he can catch the ball. It's not like he's got stone hands. And that was from the tight end spot. Like, he was a tight end at Alabama that did some fullback responsibilities. Like you mentioned just now with AJ Barner. And Seattle had a total of like 13 plays last year where they ran fullback type formations. I mean, very, very small percentage, right?
And when they did, it was AJ Barner that was brought into the backfield. Well, that's not completely true. They had Tyler Lockett at the fullback spot for 2 plays, which is laughable given Lockett's size and notorious not wanting contact because he's trying to keep his body healthy. But they would bring him in there just to create a certain look, and then he would run routes out of that position. But it was always a little weird. But yeah, there were 11 other plays, and I believe Barner was the guy for all 11 of those.
So I made a little bit of a mistake. There was 19 total. So there were
oh, okay.
And this is 22 personnel I'm talking about. It's like really condensed formation. So you've got two running backs, one of which was a fullback, 2 tight ends. That was used 7.6% with the Saints in 2024, even though they had some injuries where they had to kind of move away from those type of plays later on in the season. Seattle used that formation 5 snaps last season. Saints were 4th and 13 personnel, 1 back, 3 tight ends. So where everything's kind of stacked up and you've got a tight end that's off the line of scrimmage a little bit. So it's all kind of just bunched. They ran 13 personnel, 89 plays out of that formation, led the league, and then 19 total plays for the Seahawks out of both formations. So all in all, the Saints ran 480 offensive snaps in 12, 13, and 22 personnel under Kubiak, while the Seahawks combined for 202 plays on those same multi-tight end sets.
Which is kind of silly because if you think about I guess for part of it, I mean, when Fant was hurt, you were stuck with Pharaoh Brown as your other tight end. So why would you run 2 tight ends in those plays or in those games, right? Because Fant only played in 14 games. So there were 3 games when they had 1 legit tight end in Barner. So I could understand them not running any 12 or 22 personnel
I agree
there. So now they've got a 3rd tight end. So hopefully we're going to see more of the tight ends.
Yeah, all of this will be fascinating to see how it all kind of comes together. I just see us being more physical. Like you had Robbie Oots out there, even if it's Brady Russell, you're going to put another position player out there that can really block and be physical. This whole identity is just going to have a completely different look this year. I think you will see a lot of condensed formations where you've got one wide receiver out, but you've got everyone else in, and you move players around off of that. It's interesting. It's going to be fascinating to me, especially when you add Jalen Milroe into the equation. It's like,
and that's why you would do those tight formations, and you pull everyone in by bringing in that 3rd tight end, and then you have your wide receiver motion in so that he's also close to the line, because that generates huge areas outside of the formation that are just empty. And then you let a guy like Jalen Milroe just run out there and outrun the linebackers to the corner. And if he can get there, which he will because he's so much faster than them, he can get around the corner and go.
Last year in New Orleans, when they didn't even have a running quarterback, they had Carr back there. They would do that bunch formation and run to one side with the option to peel back around, and nobody was there because usually they would kind of motion with a jet sweep to the strong side as well, and so you just pull the entire defense in one direction. And I was thinking to myself when I was watching that, I was like, oh my God, if Jalen Milroe was the quarterback, this would almost be impossible to defend, because Jalen Milroe always has the option of pulling the ball up and throwing the ball, but you've always got to account for him. You have to account for him on the backside, which is going to take one more defensive player out of that formation. That's really hard to defend at that point.
Yeah, because when you have everybody, the entire defense going and offense going left, and then he suddenly pulls the ball out and is going right, and there's like big, huge piece of real estate out there.
He's got to beat one guy, which he can do in his sleep.
Which, yeah, because usually that one guy is a defensive end, who's or 260 pounds, whose job is it to just watch the backside. But how do you do that when the guy's got the speed that Milroe does?
It's a 4.38 guy against a 4.7 guy. Like, who's going to win that battle?
Yeah. And so these are the kind of situations why the Seahawks drafted Milroe in the 3rd round, because he can create those kind of mismatches and explosive plays out of it that other quarterbacks can't. I mean, you've got him and Lamar essentially that are going to have that ability to use that kind of speed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be fantastic, and so getting back to this and ending this conversation on tight ends and fullbacks, these guys are going to be so important this year. Like, These are the type of players that spring big plays, because of where they're at on the field and who they get to block on a second level and so forth. So it'll be fascinating to me how it all kind of comes together. Now, the intricate, I can't even say the word. The way that this is going to be integral into this scheme and offense, and how it all moves together and the timing and all that stuff, and in concert with the offensive line and the running backs, it's going to take some time. I mean, this thing is going to, and they could run this thing 1,000, 2,000 times, and it would still be not quite as good as it's going to be in December. But man, as soon as this thing gets rolling, it's going to be hard to defend. Again, especially when Milroe enters the game, it's like, it's such a large dimension that defenses are not really equipped to stop. Like, you go watch Lamar games, even when Russell Wilson was here, when they did the run pass option, when Russ was a, rookie in second year. It's so hard to defend that. And if you're going to defend that, then you're going to give up something else on the back end, to a wide receiver, tight end trying to rip the seam. And so it just really kind of opens up these opportunities, and I'm here for it, man. It's going to be a fun ride.
That's why this scheme change has got, both of us excited, is that you actually have, you're making it hard on defensive coordinators and defensive players. They've got to account for a lot more things. And that was something that didn't happen last year. Last year, it was just like, here's what we're going to do. And, occasionally we would be better at it than you are at defending it, and it would work. But usually we gave away too much and made it too easy on defenses. And this year, it's not going to be that way. Especially when the Jalen Milroe thing, because if you're prepping for the Seahawks, are you going to prep for the Sam Darnold led offense, which is what you're going to see 80 to 85% of the game, or are you going to prep for what happens when Jalen Milroe comes in his spots? But they
run the same formations. They'll run the same formations. The looks will be the same. Everything's going to be the same, except for Milroe can pull the ball down and take off.
So do you prep for that because you are worried about it generating incredible explosive plays? There's only so much time in a week for practice to prep for these things. So,
and what's Jalen Milroe good at? He's good at running the ball, but he's also good at throwing the deep ball. So those are completely polar opposite things that you want to be able to defend again. So you're gonna have to give up one or the other. And if I'm a defense, I guess I'm giving up the deep ball initially until he proves he can do it, because not defending the run scares the crap out of me. If you're going to give up, 10 to 20 yards per run as a defense, Jalen Milroe is going to pull that ball down every time, and he's going to make you pay and could potentially hit a home run on any given play. Whereas on the deep ball stuff, he's got, let's just say it's a 50-50 shot at a completion, and you almost play those odds because that's going to be the choice, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why we keep talking about it, even though it's going to be 15% of the snaps. You're going to see it a few times a game. You're not going to see it all the time.
Right.
At least not unless it's just wildly successful to a point where you have to you just have to keep him on the field, because
and you have to keep adding plays, right?
Yeah.
It's like, as a fan, it's every time he steps on the field, it's just going to be like, okay, you've got to pay attention now. And it's like a lottery ticket. Like, you're going to get a pull tab, and it could come up big. at any moment. And so you just like hyper focus at that moment because, they brought him in for a reason. It could just be a disguise. It could be something where they're just giving Sam Darnold an opportunity to go look at some film or whatever. And he's coming in, he's going to run a series or he's going to run, until first down or whatever. But one of those things is designed specifically to get him an opportunity to use his talent. And
that is one of the things
from.
His ability to pull the ball down and run and the designs of plays and those kind of things work best if they also have to defend what the play looks like, right? So it's not going to be every time he's out there he's pulling the ball and peeling on the backside because they'll stop defending. They won't defend the running play in the other direction as hard, and they'll keep people. And so he's got to keep them honest by actually handing the ball off. And so we will see him do that and hand the ball off and we'll be like, wow, that we just brought in the kid to do something that Sam Darnold could have done, but it's more about keeping teams honest and forcing them to defend that run play in order, because once they know they have to defend the run play, they can't just cheat and keep everybody back in position to stop Milroe. And so that we're going to see that, and people are going to be frustrated by it, and they're just going to have to get over it because it's part of allowing the other plays to be successful
and more successful. Like I would argue they could end up being more successful when he's in there because of that run pass option threat. You can also hand the ball off, to a running back. So they could all be flowing in the same direction. Milroe's physical enough where he can throw his shoulder in there and block. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity here, and the cutback lanes will be, there'll be a lot of opportunity. It's going to be fascinating to see this develop. All right. Any final words on this group? And the next show is going to be wide receivers. So that'll be a fun show too.
We never really taught you, like you're convinced that Fant is not going to make this team, that his $9 million salary.
Here's what I'm thinking. There is an opportunity. I mean, we are stacked at the tight end spot right now, essentially. Like we have a duplicate. So depending on how Arroyo looks and how comfortable they are for them, the team could view Fant as a luxury, and they could view another position group as something that they wish they had more of. So the only reason that he would be traded prior to the end of training camp would be to do something like that, where you're swapping him for another position that you feel like you could add to. Now, I think the bigger opportunity for him to be traded or moved is at the trade deadline. That's where you take advantage of him until week 8, week 9, and then he's moved for a similar situation or a 2026 draft pick. But we don't need the cap space. Like we have $32 million available in cap. It's not like we need it. We're going to roll it into next year, which is, probably more consequential. So he could definitely stay. And if he's really doing well and the whole thing is just in sync and we're just rolling, there's probably no reason to disrupt the cart there. But he's one player. If you take a look at the roster, he is one player that you could gain the cap space for. And he's kind of got a really good rookie that's going to push him. And you could say, well, I could move off of that. I could bring Eric Saubert back up off the practice squad or whatever. And we do have Robbie Oots. So I could conceivably move off Fant because it's an opportunity to improve your roster.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to improve your roster by removing a first round talent, but that's nuanced. So I get what you're saying with that. I mean, you're right. It might be a spot where it's like, okay, the offensive line is starting to click, but damn, they need a center. They need someone who can just actually hold down that spot because it's just not working with Oluwatimi. And so maybe there's a trade there, player for player, and they get a guy that can actually anchor and be legit in the middle of that offensive line and turn that offense into something that you could, go contend with. I don't know. Tight end's a hard position to do that with because there's no depth, right? Even with all three guys healthy, you have three guys. So you're getting rid of one, you're bringing up a guy from the practice squad, and you're begging the football gods to then have one of your two remaining tight ends get hurt, and you went from having three to having one in a week. And so I don't know. But
I agree.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know who wins this argument, but I think you could argue obviously
really
for either way, right? Like, I wouldn't be shocked and I wouldn't hate it if he was moved and it was for something like that. Like if it was straight up for a starting center and it maybe a pick swap, I would be like all over that. I think that would be an net improvement over the roster, and you've got Arroyo there to basically take his snaps. We went into the season last year with one receiving tight end, quote unquote. AJ Barner emerged. Maybe he's got bigger opportunities now. He's showing in camp he can take the next step. And again, you've got Robbie Oots there that can play some inline stuff if you need him to. And maybe the wide receiver room's ending up better than you thought. Maybe Torrey Horton and Ricky White ends up forcing himself on the roster, and maybe that makes it easier. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of scenarios, but okay, that's it. So find us on Twitter and Blue Sky. You can find the show on Twitter and Blue Sky. On your favorite podcast platforms, you can find us on our YouTube channel, and hit the subscribe button when you find it. Share it, like it, leave us a comment, all that good stuff. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.